Welcome to episode 8 of the UFC podcast. My guest today is coming off of a huge win on the Contender Series that Dana White has called one of the greatest fights in show's history. Bogdan Grad, welcome to the show, man.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. Thank you, man.
Let's just jump right into it. Have you been able to watch your fight back with Michael Aswell?
Yes, 15 times, 20 times.
How does it feel just a couple weeks removed?
Feels great, but to be honest, I'm looking to the mistakes I made, to the part of it that I was stiff, because for me it was all or nothing. I get into the UFC with this fight, or I'm gonna end my career.
Wow. How long before the fight did you know that that was your mindset going into it?
Mm, 1 year, nearly 1 year after the Tom Nolan loss, I knew I'm gonna start another run. I saw that there's there are possibilities to get back to contender series after the flying knee win, and that was the mindset. All or nothing. I got offers from every other organization, from everyone, but I said no, UFC or nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, the name of my podcast is the UFC podcast. I'll be honest.
Sounds great.
I watch a lot of other MMA. I love the other MMA promotions. I watch them especially to see new fighters that have the potential to reach the UFC. But I can't sit here and honestly say that there are many careers in the sport other than the UFC. The UFC is where you have to make it if you want to have a comfortable living in mixed martial arts. Um,
That's true. And also for my legacy, I thought, okay, look, I trained for 15 years. I had, now that was my 40, number 40 of my MMA fights. And I said, in my book, it can't be written Octagon, Bellator, or something like that at the end. No, it's UFC or nothing.
Absolutely. And watching some of your fights, you have the highlight reel knockouts. Like you are somebody that the UFC absolutely wants because I mean you can go viral. That's so much of the sport today is who sees the Instagram clip, who sees the Twitter clip, and you provide those knockouts for the UFC. Um, is that part of your process? Do you go into a fight wanting to have a spectacular knockout, or is it kind of just the win is the only thing that matters?
No, I want to make it spectacular, but I don't even think about it. I'm just like I am like that. I function like that. I can't go in there and fight a point fight, just to win in the safest place possible. I have to go right into it and fight like a real warrior. Of course, I'm not done, and I make the right decision at the right moment, but that's my intention.
Absolutely. And you mentioned some of the mistakes that you saw in the fight with Michael Aswell. Um, and honestly, watching some of your fights in cage fight series, I can see some of the mistakes that you made as well. You really were not as calculated as you typically are. Your kicking game was not as advanced as it typically is. You usually have this great kicking game. Your distance is incredible. We were able to see you, wrestle a little bit. You were mixing it up with Michael as well some, but your wrestling and jujitsu game is extremely dominant sometimes. Where are some areas that you want to focus in your first UFC fight that you didn't show in your contender series fight?
I think the first and the most important part is the mindset, but I don't have to work on that anymore. It was um, the big problem was for me was the pressure. I handle it very well because I have a strong mind, but we can say it however we want it. But if when you say it's all or nothing, there is a fucking pressure there. So I had to handle the pressure, and this is why I was stiffer. This is why I just went in there and and fought. I was not with the same cleverness as I could be. So my main goal was just to reach the UFC, not to get in the top 15, not to win to get there and be champion. And I am in the UFC now. For me, the UFC fights are gonna have less pressure than every cage fight series fight, because at cage fight series I knew if I'm gonna lose this fight, I'm gonna have to win two, three, or four fights to be back in the spot where I am right now. And now I have four fights on my contract. With that fight at Dana White Contender Series, I am pretty sure that they are not gonna throw me out after one loss, or maybe even at two losses, because as you said, I can be a highlight. So I have zero pressure now, and I think in the next fight I can really show what I'm made of. I can be open and I can say it honest. I was never at my fullest here in my fights before.
Was
A
there
lot of, yeah, yeah.
was there
But now I'm ready.
Sure. Was there any comfortability with it being the second time that you were on Contender Series? Did that take any of the pressure off, or was it even more being your second chance at the Contender Series?
No, it was even more because it was the second and probably the last.
Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine going into a fight with that much pressure on myself. Like that must have been very, very difficult in the weeks leading up to that fight.
To be honest, it wasn't that hard because I said to myself, I accept if I lose, that's it. I have a beautiful family, I have a beautiful fiance, everything is great. It's just that part of my life missing to get into the UFC. But I accept it if it's not gonna happen. If it's gonna happen, of course, I mean, that's easy to accept. And as soon as I really accepted it deep inside me, it was easy. Because I was like, okay, it's gonna happen how it's gonna happen.
What would have been the alternative? What would you have done if you lost that fight?
I didn't thought about it.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of possibilities because I made a lot of I've done a lot of things in my life before, but who knows?
You don't have a current day job. Are you currently working outside of mixed martial arts?
No, no.
Okay.
Since September 2021, um, I was able to stop working thanks to my sponsors.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm over in America, so I'm completely unaware of mixed martial arts over in Austria. What is the mixed martial arts scene like over there? Is it a very popular sport in Austria?
Sadly, not. It's not. But I am blessed to have a team like mine, and we have a lot of friends and a lot of friends with companies, and they support me.
Wow. And are they typically Austrian countries? Are they European companies that are supporting and sponsoring you?
Yes, just European.
Wow. And I guess would you want to continue your career staying in Austria, or do you think that you're ever going to move over to the United States?
Everything is possible, but one thing is for sure, I want to stay with my team till the end of my career. We started together with my first fight. Now 40 fights later, we are still together, made it into UFC. My coach is the first time in the UFC, and we're gonna stay together.
Wow. That loyalty is awesome. I really appreciate fighters that stick with the team that they started with. Typically in MMA, I feel like once you make it, you get your contender series fight. A lot of people are trying to come over to America. They're coming to the big mega camps. They're going to the AKAs or the ATTs that are these huge gyms. And although it's great and you can get great training, I think you lose some of the personal touch that some of your longtime coaches can have. You look at fighters like Sean O'Malley, who has the title fight coming up this weekend. Tim Welch is from the same little state that he's from. They have a personal connection together. They've been their coach. He's been Sean's coach for, man, 10 plus years. And when you just move into another gym, I think you lose a lot of that connection that you might have with your coaches.
100%. That's completely true. We are 11 years together now, and I know that what's missing in my mind when I'm fighting, they are gonna give me from the corner side. They say, Bogey, go do just a simple thing. Hit him with the right to the body and throw the left hook. And that moment when I hear them, I'm doing it. And till now, it was a great, yeah, a great teamwork.
Um, I guess the other aspect of that staying in Austria is just your teammates.
Yes.
Are there lots of guys that are able to push you in the camp, even though you're kind of the big fish in the small pond, to say?
No, sadly not. That's the main problem. But there is Daniel Shorde and Andrei Karaush. There's two guys that can help me, but we are gonna bring some high level athletes, of course.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, it's great to see just the sport growing over in Europe too. I mean, we have the pay-per-view over in France. Obviously, the UK gets some pay-per-views, but I want to just keep seeing the sport grow and grow. Um, One of the main things that I think Dana is pushing for are the performance institutes. Have you been able to go into the performance institute in Las Vegas?
Yes, last year and this year.
Great. How much would that help over in a place like Austria, over in Europe, just helping that talent grow over in those countries?
I mean, they treat you like a champion. They are such professionals, and you feel there like you feel when you're at your grandma's home. I don't know if that's a thing in America, but here in Europe we say it. When you're at your grandma's home, you get everything you want, and you just enjoy it. And that's how UFC Performance Institute feels.
That's it's awesome. How many times have you made the trip over to America?
6 times already.
Wow. And I did see you made one trip. You were competing in amateur MMA, um, in
Yeah.
in a large tournament. What was the tournament style like? I saw you fought multiple times in consecutive days.
Yes, yes. That was the IMAF tournament, and that's the biggest organization for amateur MMA. UFC is the biggest for professionals, and for amateurs is the IMAF. And that there was the World Championships where I was part of 2015 and 16 in Las Vegas.
It's incredible. A lot of fighters don't have a big amateur record, but it seems like you focused on fighting for many years at an amateur level. Um, what was the main reason behind staying amateur for so long?
I mean, the first reason was I didn't knew about it at the beginning, but my coaches knew that that's so important to build a base in MMA, and that's why I stayed there. They told me it's better, and after years, I understood it by myself. And um, when you make that step into the professional world, you should be ready already. Then you build up your record, 3, 4 build up fights, and then you have 2 or 3 big fights, and you should be there.
Yeah. Do you come from, or what background of martial arts do you come from? Are you a wrestler traditionally? Did you start with just mixed martial arts, kickboxing? What was your start into MMA?
Oh, I'm not a wrestler. My first 15 or 14 amateur fights, I just laid on my back and try to submit everybody. I mean, I this is why my jiu-jitsu is now not so bad. I think I finished my first 9 fights with triangle and arm bars. So I started with karate and kickboxing, and with a very good friend of mine at that time, we trained every day jiu-jitsu. He was very good. He was already a purple brown belt. We trained for 6 years, 2, 3 hours a day, and mm, that was my base.
Wow. And how old were you when you started?
I was 15 when I started with karate.
That's that's fairly old for a lot of people.
For 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 today, it's old. Yes.
Yes. I was just so in the United States, a lot of fighters they start with wrestling because that's what is pushed as a youth sport for martial arts. A lot of kids start when they're 4 years old. They start with they call little guy wrestling. It's just very little children wrestling, but it helps establish such a good base that a lot of times they don't have to take as long in the amateur fights because they've been wrestling for 20 years by the time they are 24 years old. um
Yes. And physically, you get big, you get strong.
yes.
You learn to push forward. You learn to land always on top. That's very important for MMA. If you're a good wrestler, you just have to learn submission defense, ground and pound, and a little bit of boxing. I mean, a little bit, but you know what? It's much easier.
Yes. Is wrestling a popular youth sport in Austria, or what kind of sports could you have played or done growing up?
Oh, judo is the most popular sport here, and also the classic ones like karate.
Karate. Is there any like football or soccer? Is that played popularly?
Yeah, soccer is popular, but I went when I was 11. I went to a soccer trainings day, and they said to me, "No, it's not for you. You have to kick the ball, not the shins of the other guy." And I said, "Okay, I knew that's not for me."
Yeah. I guess what made you want to start fighting? Were you getting into fights as a kid, or what was the first thing that made you be like, I want to be a fighter?
I think it's in my DNA. My grandfather, grand grandfather, he was a World War veteran, and he survived both of the World Wars. My father also had a judo career, and when I was 6, 7 years old, my father already fought with me. We wrestled. He play wrestled with me, and I said one day I'm gonna be a champion. Already at 7 years old. Then we moved from Romania to Austria when I was 10, and I needed a little bit of time to yeah, feel like home in Austria. And with 13 and a half, I started with training at home, and with 15 then with karate.
Wow. And I guess moving like that, how many languages do you speak?
I mean, I speak Romanian, German, and I try to speak English.
Hey,
That's a very. Now I have to focus more on my English because I have um, the words I use are not so much, and maybe it sounds a little bit dumb, but I think I'm not dumb. So
no, dude, your English is incredible. I want
thank you, bro. You're kind.
I want to do this. I want to speak to fighters. I want to tell fighters stories. This is what I want to do with my life. And so I'm trying to learn Spanish so I can learn Portuguese, but I want to just
Wow,
keep
great.
learning as many languages as I can because I feel dumb when I see a fighter get have an incredible fight and I can't speak with them. It's like, man, like they need to tell their story too. I don't like not only speaking English. I feel like I'm missing out on so many great fighters that I just don't have an ability to speak with.
Yeah, you sound like a very good human being.
Thank you. Um, what are some of the differences growing up in Romania and moving to Austria? What was that change like?
Um, in Romania, I grew up in a small village in northern Romania that's near to Ukraine. And there, mm, everybody is a little bit is more wild. No, we had a lot of fights when we was kids, and that was the main difference. When I came here, nobody was like that. Everybody was like um, behaving and being a good child, and that was the main difference. But other things than that, in Austria, in my opinion, the whole system is much better for the people.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh,
yeah.
and I mean, I guess just actual geography and scenery too. Austria is in the Alps. Did you get
Yes.
into mountain climbing or going into the mountains at all when you moved to Austria?
Oh, a lot. I when I moved to Austria, my hobby was to ride the bike, and I was with my bike for 7 hours a day, and I rode in all the mountains around the city, and we have beautiful mountains there.
So I'm in the state. It's called Montana in the United States. So
Okay, I heard about
yeah,
Montana.
it's the mountain state, and I'm in the heart of the mountains. So I've
Wow.
always wanted to go over to Switzerland, to Austria, to the Alps to see the other big mountains. I'm in the Rocky Mountains, so it's similar, but there's a different level to the Alps that are over there that I've always just had this desire to go and see. So it's a beautiful, beautiful country that you're in.
Yes, I totally agree. You should come here in winter for skiing. If you're gonna come to Austria, you can call me. You can reach out to me, and maybe we meet.
Yes, no, it's been my goal with all of the people that I have on. Um, I say I don't want to be like traditional media. I'll I'll grapple with you. Let's get some sparring in. I know there's not many people
Yeah,
over in
of
Austria.
course, of
If you don't
course.
like the interview, I'll let you beat me up. I'm only 25 years old.
Yeah.
I can take some damage still.
I saw you do some challenge with how many followers you got. You do
I do want
not push
a
up, you
squat.
do squat.
Yes,
Yes, yes.
I'm up to I think it was 869 that I did the other day.
That has to burn.
So it took me about like an hour and a half. So it doesn't take that long. I space them out. I do sets of 50 squats. So I just do 50,
Okay.
100, 150, 200 and so on. Um
And
but
you're
I'm
gonna
just
get really big legs, like the Thai fighters, you know?
yes. Um my goal is I just want to see how many I can do because it's gotten to the point where at 400 it burned, but at 800 it really doesn't burn that much more. So I think
Yeah,
I can
that's
just
crazy. I think there is nearly no limit if your mind is in the right spot. When we think about the plank record, I think that's, I don't know,
hours.
16
Yes.
hours or something like that. It's crazy.
Yep. It's a weird mind thing because if you stand up and you think I can do one squat, it's really not that hard. So you can always do one more. It's not like you're just going to completely break. It's not getting punched in the face. It's not leg kicks. I mean, 3, 4, 5 leg kicks, you might not be able to stand on that leg. This is
Yes.
a completely different kind of mental challenge because it's really easy, but it becomes very difficult when you start doing that many.
Yeah, I completely agree. No, but the mind is the most important thing. It's the only thing you have and the only thing you can control. and with that you live your life, and that's very important how you handle it.
Speaking of the mind being so important, do you have any worries about brain injuries and just keeping your brain healthy while fighting?
No, I have no worries about that. My body and I hope my mind is also like that, but my body helps me extremely. After the fight, you saw my lips, they were really swollen, and some swollen areas here. 2 days later, I had nothing. It was gone. And this is when I have an injury somewhere in 2 days, it's gone. 2 3 days, it depends on the injury, but my body heals incredibly fast. So I don't think I'm gonna have problems with that. It can happen, but it is what it is. Those are the risks with that comes with that sport. So
Have you ever heard of the X-Men?
yes, you mean the one with the
The Wolverine, the guy with the
yes,
claws.
yes.
Yes, he heals very fast. They injected him with something. I think
Ah,
you're Wolverine.
ah,
Uh,
that's cool, man.
um, yeah, it's wild to, you know, take so much damage in a fight and then just be okay, a couple days later. You see that a lot with fighters. They can have their eyebrow split open and then they'll go on to Ariel Helwani's show on Monday and they look kind of fine. Like I think that's a common thing with fighters is you just heal very rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, uh, it's not just the fighting and just what the people see in that octagon. We, I mean, a real professional athlete lives good, eats good, sleeps good, takes his supplements, goes to the sauna, goes to the cryo room, has a massage two times per week, and doesn't drink alcohol, no cigarettes, no drugs, and that the body says thank you in some ways.
How long would you say that you've been living as a professional athlete?
Mm, except the nutrition for the last 7 years, and I got a nutritionist last year for the contender series. And there I learned everything about nutrition. So we can say 1 year nutrition on point and 7 years training on point.
Wow. And with that 1 year of nutrition on point, is that the reason that you were able to drop down to 145 versus fighting at 155?
Yeah, 100%. 100. And also for my performance, for my 3 rounds with F12, because that needed a lot of conditioning, of yeah, energy. Without the right nutrition, that wouldn't be possible. Also, the weight cut was easy.
Wow. And had you previously fought at 145 at all?
Yes, I fought 3 times. The last two fights before Michael Eswell, and the fight before last year's contender series.
Okay. So it wasn't completely a new cut for you.
So, I cut it in the last day before the weigh-ins. Normally, people at my weight class go to the sauna and sweat the last 3, 4, 5 kilo maybe, and I had 1.5 to sweat.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that that's that's crazy. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
and I would not recommend this, but I think some of these fighters would say, "Oh, I can make 35."
Yeah. Also, the coaches say that just for fun, but they said, "Yeah, stay longer. We fight at 135." But it was great. I emptied my glycogen, my muscle memory, put salt away, and it had the water loading, and the process. And I went from 72 to 68.
Wow.
And then I had to sweat 1.5 kilo, and the rest I lost sleeping. That was it.
That's very easy. That's much easier than I think a lot of fighters have.
Yes, yes, I think it's a very big problem also in the UFC. And if I would say it, nobody would believe it, but the fight dietitian, I think it's his name on Instagram, it's Volkanovski's nutrition coach, or Adesanya also, and he said that nearly 90% of the UFC people, UFC fighters are cutting weight wrong and dieting wrong. Maybe I'm not 100% correct. Maybe he didn't say it exactly like that, but I think so. I don't want to spread fake news, but I think he said it like that, and yeah, I mean that makes sense because everybody's talking about hard weight cuts, and that's so hard. I mean, of course, it's hard if you are not disciplined and are on a diet for 2.5 months. Of course, it's hard. But if you are on a diet for 2.5, 3 or 4 months, how I was, then it's easy.
Yes. And I honestly think a lot of fighters cut too much weight. They're just trying to do too much. And maybe it's the reason because they're not as disciplined outside of fight camp. There are other reasons that might lead into it, but I think it's just too big of percentage that they're trying to cut. I personally would wish that there would be some change with the weight cutting. I think it's entirely unsafe. I don't see how we have a fight commission that is supposed to be looking out for the safety of athletes, allowing fighters to get right up close to death's door
Yeah.
24 hours before they go in and have a fist fight. That just, it seems wrong to me. I don't like that.
Yeah. It is also wrong. It's not good for your brain. I mean, fighting is not good for your brain, but then you cut weight, then you're dehydrated, then you have to fight 24 hours later. No, but I think we can solve that problem because everybody wants to have an weight advantages, or at least like me, to don't be in a disadvantage. If I wouldn't cut, then I'm at a disadvantage. So I do my best to cut it as less as possible. And yeah, but I think there is no solving for that problem because if they would say, okay, then let's weigh in 2 hours before the fight, then they're still gonna cut and fight completely dehydrated.
Yep. They did it in, I mean, we did it in wrestling. They did same day weigh-ins and people were cutting weight and then you just did it on the same day. In
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu tournaments, a lot of them are same day weigh-ins. They're still cutting weight. They just don't then have the 24 hours to rehydrate. Um,
that's safer. At least we have 24 or 28 hours to rehydrate, and yeah, it is what it is.
yep. And honestly, I think a lot of fighters have your sentiment. If they had the choice, they wouldn't cut weight, but they feel like they're forced into it because they know some fighters are. And so
Yes,
they don't want to be at a disadvantage, like you said.
yeah.
Um,
You saw. I mean that's a extreme example, but the fight with Tom Nolan, he's 193 centimeters tall. I mean, oof.
yeah, he's a very large person. I definitely see a career at 155 and maybe even 170 for him later in his career as he gets older.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
no.
you know, how much experience did you have fighting larger opponents like that? Do you have experience with big, tall guys that you fought?
Yeah, funny thing, my first K1 fight, 2013, was with a guy that big. And I went to decision with him. I was 16 and he was 21. It was a hard fight. And 4 fights before Tom Nolan, I had also large opponents. He was 187, I think. But Tom Nolan was on another level. He was not only tall, he's a high level fighter. And he stood in front of me, and I was like, okay, he's far away, he can catch me. boom, and he catch me. So no, it's on that level, UFC level, you that's a real big disadvantage if you
Absolutely.
are much yeah.
Yeah, at lower levels of fighting, technique wins everything. It's
Yes.
it's that argument. I don't know if you saw a couple months ago. There was this guy, a YouTuber, Bradley Martin, saying that, oh, I'm 250
Uh,
pounds. I can fight at anybody. And I guarantee Demetrius Johnson beats him. He chokes him out in under 2 minutes.
we don't even need Dimitri Johnson, one of the best. Just a low level MMA fighter or a middle level, it finished him.
Yes, but once you get to the UFC level, man, 2 pounds makes a difference. Like there's such when skill level is equal, that weight
Yes,
plays such a big role in the result of the fight.
yes, and even more the reach, the reach. That's if he can use his reach and stays outside and just use straight punches, what you gonna do?
Yeah. Who are some of the fighters that got you into the UFC? Who are your favorite fighters to watch?
The favorite of all time is John Jones for me. John Jones is my favorite of all time. Actually, I had the honor to be associated with him when I had a standing guillotine finish. And some MMA reporter did made an article, and he wrote there Bogdan Grad mirrors John Jones' finish. That was an honor for me.
I watched that 2 nights ago, and that was
Ah,
my first
thank
thought
you,
too.
man.
Was he dropped him against the cage like John Jones did Machida? That was so savage.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
Um,
Yeah.
what was it like in Austria getting the UFC fights? Were you able to go into a video store? How were you able to see those early fights?
What do you mean? Which fight?
Like John Jones, his early fights. How
Oh,
were you able to
uh,
watch the first UFC fights?
I'm not that old, so I used YouTube. So that was thanks to the thanks to the computers, it was possible to watch it online.
Yes. And then did you watch, a Bruce Lee movie? Did you watch karate movies or anything like that growing up?
Yes, yes. When I started with karate, I didn't knew so much about the real combat sport, and I thought karate is the best. And I watched a lot of Bruce Lee stuff and stood there in front of my mirror and was like, yeah, I lived it. But yeah, I mean, Bruce Lee said a lot of good things. Be water, my friend. A real legend.
Yes, and if you look at his, training regimen, what Bruce Lee did fighting was not what he did in the movies. Bruce Lee was one of the very first mixed martial artists, I think. I mean, he was throwing leg
Yes,
kicks. He knew about wrestling. He knew about grappling. That he's one of the very first that actually started to train and think of fighting like a mixed martial artist thinks.
yes, that's completely right. He also was the first one to bring MMA gloves into life.
Yeah, it's so cool to see, movies, just media actually help push the sport forward. You were on the Contender series, but the Ultimate Fighter, which was just a reality show, is a large part of why the UFC is still here today. The UFC was going bankrupt. It was not in a good position in 2005 until Dana White had the great idea to have the Ultimate Fighter, to do it as a reality show. And in that last fight when Forrest Griffin was fighting Stephen Bonner in the finale of the first season of the Ultimate Fighter, those ratings blew up all over the United States. I heard a story of people literally calling their friends in the middle of the fight in bars you have to get this fight on. You have to see what's happening. And this single fight almost single-handedly, helped save the UFC. So, just having media so intertwined with the success of the sport is a really cool thing to have. And I think it's just paying homage to Bruce Lee, to Jackie Chan, to all of these, people that started the era, and then allowing the UFC to grow is great. It's awesome to see fighters that still pay respect to those movie stars, I guess you'd call them.
Yes, yes, no, they made a lot of things possible that are now reality.
Do you think about the future of the UFC at all? What do you think the UFC can be in the next 5 years?
Oh, I didn't thought about this.
Yeah.
I was so focused just on myself to bring my mind into the right spot and to perform and to be able to show the world what I am capable of. And not the last to get into the UFC.
Yeah.
And there I am. And now it's time for new plans. Of course, now I'm thinking about climbing up to the rankings, but we're gonna see what happens step by step. Gonna take it fight by fight.
Yes. How do you go about setting goals? Because obviously, you know, ultimate goal is you want to be champion. I think every fighter when they start, like if you don't have a desire to be champion, you might want to reassess if you want to be a fighter. At the very beginning, you have to have that as a goal. But you can't become champion in one fight. You can't become champion in four fights. So how do you set those small goals to not get, discouraged or to
Mm,
keep moving forward, incrementally, one fight at a time? How do you set those small goals?
yeah. First of all, I set I have a goal for till the end of my life. Goals set what's gonna happen in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20, in 50, whatever. And then the small goals are realistic ones. Also, some of them not 100% realistic because we should dream about things first to achieve them. And you said that the fighters dream about to be world champions. Yes, at the beginning it was like that, but after that, uh, it changed for me. I said my biggest dream is just to get into the UFC. When I get into the UFC, I don't care what's after that. It's time to make new goals. I already made them, but I don't want to talk a lot about this because I didn't even had my first UFC fight. Let me first fight the first fight and show the world what I'm capable of, and then I can talk about more.
Yes, absolutely. Um, when would you like your first UFC fight to happen?
I heard something about December,
Okay.
so potentially it's gonna be December 7th. December, I think it's in LA, in Las Vegas,
Hmm.
or 14 in Florida,
Okay. Um,
Tampa.
and I ask because, your record, your activity is very high. You have lots of fights in each calendar year. You mentioned the Tom Nolan loss, which was, it was a knockout loss, and you were back in, 3 months later. So I
Yes,
definitely like it's very clear that you want to stay active. Is that correct?
100%.
Okay. Um, how many fights would you ideally have in one year? Obviously, we're at the end of 2024, but think of just like a 12-month period, a calendar year.
Yeah. Four would be idealistic, but if they call me short notice, it can be even 5 or 6. Why not?
Yeah, go for the record.
Yeah, let's go. Let's fucking go.
Man. Oh man, it was so fun speaking with you today, man. The last thing for you is just roll out how people can find you. Where do you want people to find you, and what's next for Bogdan Grad?
Yeah, thank you very much for taking time and for talking to me now and giving me the platform here. People can find me on Instagram, the Unleashed MMA. And if they Google my name, Bogdan Grad, they're gonna find all the other social media stuff. And yeah, I want to say thank you to everybody who is watching and supporting my journey. Thanks to my team, to my fiance, and all the people that are around me and help me achieve my dreams.
Absolutely. It was an honor speaking with you. I'm so happy for you that you made it into the UFC and that you gave the fans such an incredible fight. It was a pleasure to watch.
Thank you very much. Wish you all the best.